Hello and welcome again to the Centre for Computing History. I'm Adrian and this of course is Phil.
Hello.
And we're going to be having a look at the MSX range of computers.
Very popular range of computers. No, they weren't really, were they?
No, they really weren't.
There were a lot of them. Every company licensed the MSX standard.
In Japan.
They weren't that popular in Europe. They didn't sell particularly well.
In fact, I think they were all built in Japan, weren't they?
They were all Japanese companies, so Pioneer, Sony, Mitsubishi, of course, Panasonic, Canon, of all people, the Toshiba, HX10.
This was, of course, the one that if you were to have an MSX in the UK, it probably was a Toshiba SX10, I can't say it either.
It was one of the more common ones around here. I think we've got 3 of them knocking around the archive somewhere. And I don't know if it's in shop, but there's a Yamaha one just around there that had the fancy FM synth module included. So it was a fairly diverse range. They all had common features, of course. You had to have your standard 4-directional cursor key layout. You had to have
full travel keyboard.
2 joystick ports, a certain amount of RAM minimum. So each manufacturer tried to get their own spin on it to make theirs the one that you'd buy. And Pioneer really went all out on theirs. It looks fantastic, of course, because it's Pioneer. It wouldn't be out of place sitting on your AV rack.
So it doesn't look like just a normal micro like these other ones?
No, this was a computer for the discerning person, somebody who had a little bit of taste, somebody who liked black equipment with silver outlines. But this is the actual computer bit. This bit's just the keyboard, of course. It's got a really long keyboard lead in case you don't want to be next to your computer. Maybe you've got it mounted in a rack or something, I don't know. But it's got all the standard MSX features, so 2 joystick ports, cartridge slot goes in there. There's an expansion slot at the back as well.
Cassette port, obviously, for loading the cassette games.
Cassette, serial, a Centronics port for your printer. And then it starts to get a little bit more pioneer-y, a little bit more odd. It's got a dazzling array of audio and video jacks at the back. So as well as RGB output for your colour monitor and composite output here, it's also got composite in and audio in. And the idea was this was a pass-through video system. So you could overlay your computer graphics onto an external video feed. Maybe you'd use it for subtitling, maybe you'd use it for fancy animation effects, fades and swipes, all stuff that in the early 80s was not that accessible to your home recording enthusiast. And they even produced a range of accessories to help you with this. So we've got this weird little Pioneer touchscreen tablet with an overlay for creating video wipes. It's all very fancy. We won't actually be demonstrating that because one of the previous owners was a bit of a meanie and he's dremeled out the insides of the cartridge that you need to go with it. So that's a bit unfortunate. We have other carts. I've got this one.
Salamander.
One of the classics. This is turned off, isn't it? It is now. Plug it in and turn it on. The little click you hear is a relay, switching it from straight pass-through to going through the mixing circuitry.
And then the cartridge crashes.
It's crashed, hasn't it?
So let's try a reset first. Let's see if that works.
Should we hit it? Oh, no, it's working.
That looks like that's got it this time.
They don't load particularly quickly. You sort of assume that ROM carts will just turn on and be there instantly. I
must have said there's something else about the cartridges for the machine, in that they are probably as expensive now to buy as they were back in the day. So they cost about £40 back in the day, and I think they still cost about 40 quid in second hand now.
Is it just rarity because nobody bought them back then? There's none around now to purchase?
It quite possibly is. But yeah, they are available in numbers, but like you say, I don't think they're sold huge amounts.
There's certainly more cassette software out there, but who really wants to hook a cassette up and wait 20 minutes for it to load, like it's doing right now?
One of those things, actually, that I used to see in Woolworths and Boots back in the 1980s. I used to see like the Mastertronic cassettes with the white label of MSX in the corner, and it wasn't until years later I even knew what an MSX was. I didn't know a single person with one.
I never even knew they existed back in the day.
So there is, as you see on the screen here, we have copyright 1983 by Microsoft.
Yeah, they wrote the BASIC, of course. They licensed the BASIC to anyone who'd buy it back then. Most home computers ran a variant of it. But for the MSX, they also designed the standard. And allegedly MSX stood for Microsoft Extended, but nobody would ever actually say it did back then. And I think one of the conditions of being an MSX machine was you had to run the same BASIC as everybody else. It's not loading, is it? Here we go. Konami.
Oh, Konami,
Back when
yes.
they actually made games rather than pachinko
there
machines.
is a whole range of Konami carts. So we've got
Salamander, of course. What's this one here? Hyper Sports.
And they all had these lovely orange and blue liveries. They look great on your shelf. Now, basically...
Quite nice packaging.
So, one thing we did notice about this when we gave it a little go earlier is maybe some of the, shall we say, slight limitations of the MSX hardware. By the time this came out in like 1985, 86...
People expected more of an arcade feel to their video games. No more bleeps, boops, and simple sprites.
But
this is
pretty much
not great, is it?
So that was a speed up, wasn't it? I think. I'm playing this with an old Atari joystick because that's about all I could lay my hands on at the time. Oh, here we go.
The graphics aren't great, if I'm honest. As I said, it had no support for hardware scrolling, which was a big problem.
And also, most joysticks back in the 80s were one-button joysticks, so I'm having to periodically
They've put all the
swap.
All the power-ups on the M and the N key for some reason.
Now, you can see the main problem here with the MSX hardware is evident in the scrolling or...
It's incredibly jerky.
Or complete lack of it. Oh, I'm now firing upwards. I probably didn't want to do that. Oh, and I've got some sort of laser now. Don't know how that happened.
Oh, my goodness, it's incredible.
So,
yes, I think that basically covers the quality of most of the games for it. They were ports from other systems.
It was weird,
they did
actually,
all right.
because you had the cartridges, which were at least fairly colourful. If you were to load in a cassette from an MSX, what you would usually have is pretty much monochrome graphics that look very Spectrum-like, because I believe they're both Z80 based machines, and it just used to get a lot of Spectrum ports. So it would have games like Alienate and Night Law would be in single colour.
I suppose ports were easy and cheap back in the day, rather than making something new.
I think they would only aim to sell about 5,000 tops MSX games. So I don't think there was an awful lot of need to spend a lot of time porting them. Oh, these are... See, I have to keep doing that.
It's pretty bad, isn't it? The box does claim new 8-voice polyphonic LSI custom sound chip mounted. So they're not simple ROM carts. You apparently could have extra hardware in there if your game was worthy of the extra cost. Z80 processor, as you say, varying amounts of RAM. This one has, if I refer to the specs here, 48K, although 16 of that is video.
The Toshiba here, I believe, was 64. Okay.
And that's basically where MSX1 machines topped out, being an 8-bit machine. So yeah, that's the cartridge side. If we could turn it off quickly.
You now see we have a video playing.
We're just running one of our standard promotional videos in here from a video player. You would be hearing sound if the video had any sound, but it doesn't, so you don't. But if we turn it back on, computer kicks in, and if you start without a cartridge, it will boot into BASIC. And as well as a standard MSX BASIC, this one has the option of including P-BASIC, which was Pioneer's extensions to the standard BASIC.
Oh, we have a whole 28K of RAM.
Yeah, it's not great, but with these buttons on the left here, you can go computer, you can flip to the video, or you can go to superimpose mode, where you can see the computer stuff on top of the video. I suppose it's what you might use if you were subtitling your family home videos or something, or putting in title cards. You play the video, display the thing, and then record it on the way out. This button here just flips the relay manually, so all the video mixing circuitry is switched out. I suppose you'd do that if you wanted to get the cleanest picture without having to disconnect all the cables, maybe. We can do whatever we want here and it'll appear on the screen with the video. That's amazing, or it was back in the day.
And of course the other MSX machines did not have these features.
I don't remember any that could do overlay like this. There's one other feature that we can't demonstrate here, but this particular MSX machine could also be hooked up to a Laserdisc player, or more specifically, one of 4 incredibly specific Pioneer Laserdisc players.
And probably very expensive Laserdisc.
Oh, almost certainly. There's a control port on the back that goes through, and it's got a proprietary signalling mechanism. And P-Basic allows you to control the Laserdisc player from BASIC. You can seek to different frames, play forwards, do trick play like seeking to chapters or slow motion, which is actually really cool, and probably nobody ever used it. The Laserdisc player, if you're thinking that's really cool and I'd like to get that, don't do it with the PAL model. The only Laserdisc software that was released on Laserdisc was NTSC in Japan. So if you want to load software off Laserdisc and play it that way, you need the NTSC one. If you just want to play Laserdiscs, you can probably get it to work with a PAL. It's a nice looking machine.
Unlike the others.
Yes. None of them particularly popular in their day, but looking back, it's nice to see they're all trying different things. There was a more diverse range of systems back then.
So it was a very, very early attempt at standardising
It
your home
was.
micro.
I suppose they wanted to be able to sell their software on lots and lots of computer platforms without actually having to rewrite it. So you standardise as much of it as you can. That's the Pioneer PX7. Hope you enjoyed looking at it.
As much as we did playing it. So we'll be hopefully doing some more videos soon. And you are typing something like us and subscribe.
Good enough for me.
There we go.
Do what the computer says. See you next time. Goodbye.
Like us and subscribe. Oh dear.